So today I've got Susan Gutierrez Inostroza, and Susan is the MD, the Managing Director at Legacy Habit Banks. Welcome, Susan. How did I do with the pronunciation?
You did very well. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. So tell us all about Legacy Habit Banks. What's it all about and how long have you been going?
So we've been going from March 2021, and Legacy Habitat Banks was created after the ascension of the Environment Act in 2020, which basically means that now developments and land will need a 10% net gain in any biodiversity that's lost due to their development moving forward.
So who are you dealing with? Who are your clients and customers?
So our clients are typically developers who are going to be putting in planning applications after November 2023. They need to find a 10% uplift on the biodiversity. So there are major clients, although we do have a secondary market of investors who are looking at buying BNG units, so that's biodiversity net gain units that are measured using the DEFRA metric. And they're looking to buy them as an investment, seeing that they think the units will increase as the market matures. So there is a secondary market to that, and also a voluntary market where people buy biodiversity net gain units as similar to carbon credits, although we're not the same as carbon credits.
Okay, and just explain units in that context.
So a unit, basically, it's an area of land that is measured using DEFRA metric, which is now 0.4. And what that does is information is fed into the metric from an ecologist, and that calculates how much biodiversity there is on that site, and that allocates a number of units that are on that site, which are then anything. So that gives it a baseline. Then what they do is make a calculation of how we could enhance those units, that site. So what happens is we create a poor grassland into a moderate grassland or a good grassland, and by doing that we increase the number of units, and the increase in the units is called additionality. That additionality is then what we can sell. So if there was originally 100 units and we create 150 units, we can sell 50 units. For the developer, you can then buy those units to offset his biodiversity loss from his development.
Right. Wow, fascinating. So it's a pretty niche area, this, but I guess there are some other organisations involved in doing what you do. What would you say differentiates Legacy Habit Banks from others in this market, in this industry?
I think basically it's how we deal with our landowners, and basically the landowners are such as farmers are the people that own the land where we would create the habitat. In that we do a true joint venture. We are partners with the landowner, and so any income that's created from the sale of those units after they've been developed is split between the landowners and ourselves, rather than the more common version is that the landowner is paid a lease, and from the lease he gets a part of that lease money is for his rent and part is to maintain the land. So our model is different in that way, more beneficial to the landowner. The landowner could also actually apply to be paid by us to do the maintenance on his land. He knows it better than anybody else, has the machinery most likely. So that's how we differentiate. We're different in that aspect. We also are more of a habitat bank and a consultancy. So we also do consulting for local authorities. We do consulting for developers and landowners. But also within all of that, we actually would help people who've got their own habitat bank to take that to market. So through the legals and the negotiations with the local authorities and the monitoring reporting to how they're going to look after and ring fence the money, which has to be safeguarded for 30 years, which is the lifetime of any units that you create. They have to be safeguarded and maintained for 30 years.
Okay, well, so relatively new market that you're in. Looking ahead, what does the future look like? What are the opportunities, and also what are the challenges that lie ahead?
So the biggest challenges are waiting for the government to get the secondary legislation out there so that we can actually start to have a more level playing field. At the moment, every local authority we deal with is different and is dealing with it in a different way. They can enforce it now under National Planning Policy Framework, but it comes into full force in November. and it's becoming very late in the day that we're getting the secondary legislation out there. So that's the biggest challenge, because we're constantly having to change the legal documents, how we're working. And for example, if we've got sites now that were done under DEFRA's metric 3 and have a baseline set there, that will not be acceptable come November. We'd have to redo that with the new DEFRA metric 4, or the strategic DEFRA metric that's coming out just a little bit after that. So there's a big gap and delay in information that we needed to have had quite a long time ago. So that's the biggest challenge. Second is getting landowners to sign up for 30 years, because that's a long time that they have to have a piece of land that has to be set, and it has real strict guidance as to what they can do on that land at that time. And third is the challenge of making sure that that money is safeguarded for 30 years, that come year 15, we've not run out of money if we need to do some maintenance, and we can pay the ecologist reports at that point in time. So there are some quite big challenges, but also that challenge creates lots of opportunities, which is why we have our sister company, BNG Management, who will be taking on the responsible body status, which is the legal body that will help to enforce this, and goes into the conservation covenants with landowners and local authorities. Then also there's a marketplace for trading. Obviously, developers need to buy units, landowners need to sell units. So there's a big marketplace coming on, and that's going to be not just in England, that'll become a global market. So there are a great deal of opportunities out there. And we've partnered with the likes of Harper Adams and CBRE, Plant Life, to help all of these things come along and try and set an industry standard, because we want everything to be as clear and transparent as possible, so we don't have the same issues as the carbon trading. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot of opportunity.
Well, lots to do there. Lots going on.
Yeah.
So in your, because I know you've done other businesses as well in the past, just so generally speaking, throughout your business life, what would you say have been the biggest learnings for you along that journey?
Never give up. You have to keep on trying. If things don't work out one way, just carry on and try again, find another way. That's the biggest lesson, is don't just keep on. You've got to keep on keeping on, literally.
Yeah.
Keep on trying. There's always something out there that you can do, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There's lots of help out there. People are very generous with the help for small businesses starting up, I found, and there's lots of places to go and look. So that's the major thing. Good,
thank you for that. And if you were starting this business all over again, with the benefit of hindsight, what might you do differently?
I probably would have waited another 12 to 18 months to get started, because I might have had more legislation, more information, and had to develop less of the market ourselves. But also, I think the other thing I would have done different is that earlier on, I would have perhaps tried to engage with more landowners at an earlier stage. It's difficult and it takes a long time. So even though we are very early in the market, and we were one of the first out there and one of the first to fully trade a BNG unit through the whole process, it takes longer than we thought in that way, because partly because it's a new industry and people are reticent. They don't want to be the first to try something new when nobody else they know has done it, and partly because we're in a situation where we have a very good legal team working with us, and it took us a long time to find them. So that was the other thing. I would make sure I got all of those strategic partners in a bit earlier than had, because when we send out a contract to a landowner, they send it out to their solicitors. Usually their solicitors they've had in the family for generations. Some of them have never even heard of biodiversity net gain. So then we start having to have our solicitors work with their solicitors to get it through, and they just don't understand the market, so they've got to catch up. So I would have had more of that in place earlier on, before we got involved with the landowners, so that when we went there, it wouldn't have taken quite as long as it has to get there. Yeah,
amazing. I could carry on talking to you for ages on this. It's amazing what you're doing, and I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you.